a passionate instigator and dynamic problem solver. Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, the host of the Dr. Kevin Radio Show, will be taking you outside the box, behind the curtain, and identifying the load of BS we are fed every day. And now, Dr. Kevin.
Hello, and welcome to October. Welcome to the Dr. Kevin Show. And welcome to the first Dr. Kevin Show since we've had worldwide humiliation on our debate stage called politics. And in this Dr. Kevin Show, as always on the first Thursday of the month, we're going to have Matt Connarton. He's going to come in and give us some of his political insights, thoughts, ideas, and pulling his hair out by the roots with our current political climate. Matt considers himself neither a Republican or a Democrat. He is an independent thinker who has unfortunately had to give up on Republicans temporarily since there's no good thoughts left there to think, at least when it comes to the national stage. Matt has his own show called Matt Connarton Unleashed. It is a drive time show, 4 to 6, Monday through Friday at 95.3 MNFH. If you are not in Manchester, New Hampshire, and you cannot tune in to there directly, you can go to ipmnation.com, or you can go to mattconnarton.com. You can listen to the show via the internet and still call in, as Matt brings in a variety of people to talk about a number of different issues. And every Monday has a show where he brings in people of color to talk about today from a person of color perspective, to try to see if he can help elevate and educate the conversation. So he takes one day a week off from politics, where there is no elevation and there is no education going on, because it's just a shit show. And you can only educate shit so high. You can pile it much higher than you can educate it. Matt, welcome.
Well, hello.
Hello.
Good to be here.
Well, as always, we love having you. We do want to remind our listeners that this is a live call-in show. So you can call in at 202-570-7057. Again, that's 202-570-7057. You can share an idea, a thought, ask a question, leave a comment. Just remember, we do ask that it is all respectful. We try to keep all of the disrespectful side of things between Matt and I, we don't like to share. Right, Matt?
That's right.
So we're going to finish on the latter half of the show, the American Anti-Corruption Act that we started last week, talking about it and how we can actually make change from a state level that will bypass Congress, bypass the White House, and maybe give us an actually functioning government at some point if we'd all get together and realize we have more power than they would ever want us to believe we have as individual Americans. But that's for later. For today, what's been the exciting discussion on your show, Matt? You're the political, whatever they call you, pundit for the Dr. Kevin Show.
Oh. Well,
so make it funny, pundit.
Right. Well, today on the show, we discussed, and we got into it somewhat yesterday, but more so today, the debate. I don't know if you watched it, but I thought it was very impressive, very informative. Everyone comported themselves well, learned a lot. I'm kidding, of course. No, it was the worst debate in the history of the galaxy. But, we discussed that really dominated the discussion today on my program, talking about the debate. My guest during actually most of the show, I kept him on for a long time, a gentleman named Matt Connarton, who I'm becoming a little bit suspicious of, only because it didn't occur to me until today, but his last name sounds very Russian. But I'm going to have to look into him. But he has a great show called Politipod, and he's been joining me once every couple of weeks on average. And we discussed in depth the debate, because there was It was a lot to unpack.
So I thought about watching the debate.
Oh.
I thought about watching the debate.
Yeah.
And then I checked. I was all out of anti-anxiety medication. I was all out of antidepressant medication. I was all out of any kind of, like bowls of weed to smoke. My hallucinogenics were low, in fact, non-existent, because I don't do any of that crap anymore of any kind. And I didn't think that my CBD gummies would be enough for my nerves, so I decided to pass. Because my prediction would have fallen in the shit show lineup prediction.
Yes.
I figured I would get the highlights, from all of the different sources that I subscribe to. I just respected myself too much to be that self-abusive.
You might have thrown the term highlights around a bit loosely.
Well, I heard that the only thing that would make them look light is if you were high. That you might have found some funniness in it if you had smoked enough of the right kind of weed. Yeah. So I am looking so forward, as I know that many of my listeners who hopefully had enough discerning taste to either shut it off very early on or didn't even turn it on. I mean, I know that there were some wonderful reruns of Bewitched on that someone could watch. I personally was watching RuPaul's Drag Race because, if I actually put RuPaul up as somebody put a thing and said they thought the next moderator should be a woman and who would you recommend? I put up RuPaul. I thought that RuPaul would be a great moderator for the presidential debate. What do you think?
Maybe a little distracting. Which version of RuPaul? Because, sometimes I don't even know how to talk about that stuff anymore without it saying the wrong thing and offending somebody.
Oh, go ahead. We don't do politically correct on the Dr. Kevin show.
That's okay. I figured out how to say it. That's okay. I figured out how to say it politically correctly anyway. We don't know how she would be presenting that evening, because there's male presenting and there's female presenting. And I would personally want the female presenting RuPaul because I would enjoy the sassiness.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely would have to be the female. I'm voting for the female RuPaul. I think that I think her having it there. I was actually watching an episode recently where this challenge, these six drag queens really did a bad job, and she put them all up for elimination, and she said, I have 3 words for your performance: stink, stank, and stunk. And I went, she'd be great at the debate moderator, because she could use that line repeatedly.
That's true.
See? So I would like to hear, though, was there any value? Seriously, because I didn't watch it. I mean, I know what I've heard. I've read all the opinions. I've read all of the cover-ups. I've read all the lies. I've read all the delusions. But you watched it. I trust you, Matt. Was there any value points? Did anything at all get said that would inform the American people what either one of their presidencies would look like?
Well, no. I mean, I did watch the entire thing. Jenny and I watched the entire thing. I'm a political junkie, as you know, so I live for the debates. I always watch all the primary debates, and then of course I watch the general election debates. Although I did get a little bit of fatigue, like that last half hour, because it kind of wore me out a little bit. But Trump constantly and I'm not even exaggerating by saying constantly just interrupted and talked over Joe Biden. It was impossible to control him. And I say that because Chris Wallace has been getting attacked from all sides for losing control of the debate. People are saying he did a terrible job as moderator because he didn't moderate and he wasn't in control of the debate at all, which I think I'll take a moment to just defend Chris Wallace. I did on my show today, and I'll do it again here. He did the best he could, but there's only so much he could do. Several times throughout the debate, Chris Wallace, more forcefully than I'd ever seen a debate moderator speak to a candidate, really admonished Trump and told him things like, look, you agreed to these rules, sir, so please allow your opponent to speak and, to get a sentence out without you interrupting. And that happened multiple times during the debate where Chris Wallace had to speak to the president that way. So short of actually going up on stage and physically restraining Trump, I don't know what people expected Chris Wallace to do. There's nothing he could have done. It's like, he might as well have been shouting at a tornado. I mean, there's nothing he could have done. But, it was Trump being Trump to the max. I think the most notable thing that came out of it was Trump not wanting to denounce white supremacists or supremacists. I hear the word spoken both ways. And giving a shout out to the right-wing organization, the Proud Boys. That was noteworthy, but as far as any substance in terms of policy positions or anything, no, there was nothing. Biden could barely get a word in. Biden fired off a few insults, which I don't hold against him because he was clearly frustrated, calling Trump a clown, calling him a liar, telling him to shut up. But no, I mean, it was the worst debate in history. And if we weren't already the laughingstock of the world, we certainly are now. It was dreadful. Yeah.
So it wasn't a debate. There was no debate that happened.
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate.
Okay. And as has been the case since day one, Trump wrote the rules to the way that he wanted them. And in this case, it was kind of sort of, I feel sorry for Chris Wallace. In fact, not even watching it, but hearing the criticisms of Chris Wallace not controlling it. I've watched enough debates. They don't give the moderator the power to do that in these
Correct.
local debates.
Yeah.
And that's been my complaint with them for ages.
I agree, because the moderators always, when it goes bad, I mean, it's never gone as badly as that debate, but whenever it goes bad, the moderators end up getting flack, and it's like they can't control how the candidates behave on stage, and it's really unfair. And I feel badly for Chris Wallace. I mean, Chris Wallace, he's an actual journalist who works at Fox News. So, and unicorns are probably real, just knowing that. So, I give him respect anyway, but because I think he's one of the few people at Fox who actually genuinely cares about journalism. But there's nothing he could have done more than what he tried to do. There's always people who they just want to blame everything on the moderators. It's not fair.
So I was led to believe that Biden got out at least one or two policy points partially of what he wanted to do, but it sounds like that didn't really happen either.
Well, it was hard for him to really get anything across. I mean, yeah, we established a few things along the way. He definitely does not support the Green New Deal. He does not support defunding the police.
Okay.
But there wasn't much. There wasn't much
Okay.
he could say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and of course, as one would expect, our bully in chief, claimed victory, which nobody lived in that universe, except for a few sycophants, because even some of the GOP criticized him. That he might have been a little loud and aggressive. That. Now, the debate commission has come out and said they're going to change the format of the next debate so this cannot happen again. And I know that in any moment we're probably going to be headed to break, but that's the next thing I want to talk about, because they are talking about making changes, and I'd like to hear your insights. Now, have you read about the changes that they're talking about making?
A little bit.
Okay. So when we get back, we're going to talk about, is there a way for this country to actually see a presidential debate in the year 2020? Right here on the Dr. Kevin Show.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
A social distancing tip.
While the CDC urges you to avoid close contact, like hugging or shaking hands, there are other non-physical ways to say hello. Wave, wink, use sign language, salute, smile, give the peace sign, throw up an air high five, do jazz hands. Remember, stay a minimum of 6 feet or 2 arms length away from others, and stay home if you can. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. This is the first Thursday of the month, and like all first Thursdays of the month, I have a guest co-host of Matt Connarton from Matt Connarton Unleashed, who has a drive time show 4 to 6, Monday through Friday at 95.3 WMNH. If you are not in the Manchester, New Hampshire area, you can go to mattconarton.com. And you can pick up the show there and actually do your live call-ins through that and still participate. Matt's show specializes oftentimes on politics. He even brings in political pundits, and some would call him a political pundit himself. We like to have Matt on the show to kind of talk about once a month the politics of the day and get some insights from somebody who considers himself an independent moderate. This is a live call-in show, so please feel free to call in and share your ideas, your thoughts, your opinions, ask your questions at 202-570-7057. Again, that's 202-570-7057. We do ask that your comments are respectful, though. So, Matt, the independent, the political commission, the Presidential Debate Commission, which is supposed to be a nonpartisan organization, has said they're going to change the rules of the debate because of the shit show that just happened this week. What can you share that you have read, how they're going to do it, and what do you think about it?
Well, I saw something before my show, so I don't know if there's been anything new in the last couple of hours, but the idea being floated was, the obvious one that they might shut the mic off, shut Trump's mic off if he begins interrupting or over-talking Biden. And obviously, the rules have to apply to both of them, so the same would apply to Biden, but it's not necessary for Biden, really only Trump. But the thing is, if they start changing rules, will Trump agree to that? So there's some question about that, because all this has already been worked out. And, as Chris Wallace kept admonishing Trump, that you agreed to this. These are the rules that you agreed to. So if they start changing rules on debates that have already been set and everything's already been agreed to, I'm not sure how that works. Trump might just refuse to agree to that. So, well, we'll see.
So, law, the soul of law is technicality of the law, or something like that. I'm probably murdering the quote, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Trump's team agreed that each person would have 2 minutes, would have 2 minutes to answer the question. It's not changing any rules to turn the mic off at the end of 2 minutes. Why does that change a rule? That doesn't change a rule. There's no rule change there. You agreed that each person would have 2 minutes to talk. We've just chosen that the way that we're going to keep time is at the end of 2 minutes, your mic goes off. Not just interrupting, your mic goes off and your mic stays dead until it's your 2 minutes. That's not a change in the rule. That we're just managing our technology.
Yeah, I mean that's how I would argue it. But
yeah.
that's not how the Trump team is likely to respond. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, they don't always. I was just going to say they don't always necessarily do what they're told either. The debate commission. I remember I don't know if you remember this, in 2004, there wasn't supposed to be any split screen when John Kerry and George W. Bush debated. And apparently the Bush team was very upset because they did use a split screen for the television broadcast, and you could see some of the faces that W was making while John Kerry was talking, and Bush ended up looking kind of foolish because he was making these really sour faces and looked like he didn't want to be there, and it reflected poorly on him, and apparently it had been established there would be no split screen, but there ended up being a split screen anyway, so you could still see Bush while John Kerry was talking. And so, but I mean, the way the Bush team fixed that was they were just more mindful of that. Bush was more mindful of that in the future debates, not to be making those faces and looking pissed off whenever John Kerry was saying something that he didn't appreciate.
Well, if I were king of the forest. Oh, sorry. Wrong show. If I were in charge, I would simply implement the mic rule and just implement it. I wouldn't even tell anybody. You agreed to 2 minutes. 2 minutes, we kill your mic. Next question.
Yeah.
I mean, he might stomp off the stage. Well, that's going to make him look good, isn't it?
Right.
I would just do it. I would just cut the mic. I'd just be like, moderator, just cut the mic. And on both of them. So it's fair. Both sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't need any permission. Just do it. And when Trump has a fit because he has 2 minutes to answer a question, and the next debate has people asking questions. And as we know, when he did that in Pennsylvania, he didn't answer the question most of the time. He completely would not answer certain questions asked by voters. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Of course, yeah. So here you go. Here's the question. You have 2 minutes. In the 2 minutes, cut the mic. The question goes over to your opponent. 2 minutes, cut the mic, and do it for both of them.
Right.
I mean, I remember them making fun of Joe Biden because at the first of the primary debates, he was respecting the rules. You remember? You remember that exchange early on?
Yeah, I think I remember a couple of those because Biden struggles in an environment where he's not debating one person, but he's debating multiple people. And, you know, everybody talks over their time, and Biden had this habit of stopping when he was supposed to stop instead of just going a little bit over and finishing his thought. And, yeah, that would happen quite a bit.
Yep. But, yeah, but I remember there was this whole thing. So that's what I think. Now, I don't know if I ever told you this. I probably have at some point, but it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, maybe. I was actually approached about, I was asked if I would submit a format. Oh, okay. So the company that produces those kind of shows approached me about doing one.
Yeah.
And I did the format of the show. And one of the things that I proposed doing was that I would invite national politicians that would discuss issues, like do a debate or whatever. But they had to agree to the terms of the show, which was that they would each be in a chair that would be over a, like, you know, when you go to a carnival, like a tank of water.
Yeah.
And anytime that they either said something that was wrong, that was clearly like, we can prove that that's wrong, that's a lie, they'd get dunked. Anytime that they whatever, they would get dunked. And it was meant to be like a kind of a gaggish thing, but, you know, like, and the person who got dunked the most won, like, got dunked the least was who we supported from the Dr. Kevin show for the least amount of lies and deception. So this was just part of the format of, like, you know, like the whole, like, what every day was going to be a different way. But I think I would love to see that in the presidential debate, don't you? Can't you see Biden and Trump? And you've seen all of those signs dump Trump. So every time he lied, we'd dump him. Every time he interrupted, we'd dump him. Every time he went over time, we'd dump him. And then we wouldn't have a problem in this country because he'd be drowned. Right? Wouldn't that solve it?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'd both be reticent to agree to that because, you know, neither of them wants to get their hair wet. Trump, of course, doesn't want to get his hair wet because he does this whole big thing. Like, it's not even a comb over. It's more like a comb forward and around and back and loop it. And then Biden, of course, has hair plugs. And I've never met Joe Biden, but I've known people who have hair plugs, and up close, you know, it looks like they just have like doll hair sprinkled on their head, which I assume he got because he's been running for president for 30 years, and we don't tend to elect bald presidents. So you know, I think both of them would be very concerned about their hair getting wet. Maybe they could wear shower caps.
Well, there's a possibility there. But, you know, I mean, Trump did write off $70,000 for his hair being done one year on his taxes.
Yes.
So taxes, all of this is getting leaked out, dribbled out. Somebody got their hands on them. At this point, does it really make any difference? What are your thoughts?
Well, so I'll say something that might surprise you a little bit. I've never been one to really criticize him over legitimately not paying taxes. And what I mean by that is this came up a lot in 2016 during the primaries. Initially, he doesn't pay a lot in tax, even though we couldn't actually see his tax returns. But he would talk about well, not paying a lot in tax makes him smart, because if you're a businessman, particularly in real estate, where you're able to write things off because of amortization and depreciation and of assets and whatnot, he said that paying as little in taxes as possible made him a smart person. And I actually, believe it or not, agree with him somewhat, because of course, if you're in business, you want to pay as little as you can legally get away with paying. You don't want to overpay tax. So of course you're going to take advantage of the laws and the tax code. Same as with his bankruptcies. He said he used the laws of the United States to legally declare bankruptcy. Well, okay. I'm actually not gonna knock him for that. The problem is, though, here we seem to be in a situation where, actually, let me say this. So if he paid $750 one year, if all those tax deductions are legitimate, don't blame him, blame the tax code. And there's a lot wrong with the tax code in this country, where someone who purports to be a billionaire can pay $750 in taxes more than someone who makes, $40,000 a year ends up paying in taxes. However, there is another issue, and that is he apparently has something like $400 million in debt of personal guaranteed loans that are going to be coming due in the next few years. That's a problem, because who does he owe that money to? And if the theory is true that he owes that money to Russian oligarchs who would deposit money, because that's the only way he could get a loan, oligarchs who would deposit money into places like Deutsche Bank, where then he would withdraw the money, and that's how the loan would be facilitated. Is that why he doesn't say anything bad about Vladimir Putin? Because he owes money to these Russian oligarchs? So that's my concern. It's a national security concern. If the tax deductions are legal, and maybe they're not, but if the tax deductions are legal, I say blame the tax code. Don't blame Trump. But I have a national security concern about all these loans.
Well, and I'm in complete agreement with you, and you don't surprise me at all. In fact, I expected you to go there. Because I've owned my own business for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, again, if there's a problem, if it's all legitimate, of course, him reporting one thing to the bank to get a loan and another set of numbers to the IRS, well, that's got legal right. Yeah, that's a little off as well. And
Michael Cohen claims that's what he did.
And him paying, $737,000 of consulting fees to Ivanka while she was a full-time employee at the company she was consulting to.
Yeah.
Might be a little, questionable. So he probably needs to be under audit. And then, of course, there's the, $100 million tax question of whether he got money back from the IRS that he shouldn't have gotten back and all of that. It's a mess. But the national security of the money he owes and who he owes it to and how he got the money, and was it legal to get the money in the way he got it? Yeah, those are the big concerns. And it would explain a lot about the whole, why has he just ignored and turned his head of repeated things that Putin has done that even the Republican Congress was up in arms about, and a couple of other places, not just Putin. You know, there's some other, there's some awful big coincidences. But when I say some of this is getting exposed because his taxes are getting exposed, that there's like stuff coming up, this is all part of the same conversation. Will it make a difference in who will and won't vote for him?
Well, I mean, it will. It'll help sway some independents. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope so.
You would think so, but there's still a lot of people. There's still people trying to make up their mind because there's such a muddying of the waters that the most legitimate of sources get questioned because of the loud, bombastic lies that Trump just keeps spewing out in the same way in which, to my understanding, he acted in the debate. If I talk loud enough and I'm bully enough and I bullshit enough, at the end of the day, I'm going to keep my base. But now the GOP, I don't know if it's, Yep. No, that is a legitimate worry. And I think it's a pretty good shot. We are going to see violence. And of course, he's trying to send people to the polls to make sure that the voters are all legitimate, which is great from the playbook of, intimidating, post-Civil War Deep South, the question is how far, they've got to know that unless they support him in basically chucking out the Constitution and declaring, because now he's talking about getting term limits repealed.
Is he talking about?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah. No.
I don't.
No. Yeah, he has come out and said that when he gets reelected, the first thing, one of the things on his agenda is he's going to get term limits repealed so that he can serve 12 years as president, so he can really get this country great again.
I know what you're talking about. No, I have heard him say that about having a third term. I don't think, though, I'll give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here, which I don't do a lot. I don't think he's serious when he says that. I think he says that to kind of troll everybody because he knows people go wild when he says that kind of thing. I don't think that's a serious comment, even coming from him. I mean, if there is anyone who would think that he could do that, it would be him. But I don't think that's a serious comment from him. I think he says that to be provocative. I really do.
Well, we know that when if for some reason he got elected for 4 more years, they're after him. They're not going to let him slip away into the sunset. And so I'm not sure that there's not a little part of him that looks at this as, I need to die in this office or I'm going to die in a prison cell.
That may be. Yeah.
We're seeing the act of a desperate man.
Oh, definitely.
And he will incite violence. He will overthrow our democracy. He will create the largest internal battle since the Civil War in this country, if it suits him and it keeps him out of what's waiting for him when he leaves the White House. He has no morals, no ethics, and no integrity, and he doesn't care what or who he hurts if it allows him to stay unaccountable for his actions.
Yeah, well, I've said all along, I think the state of New York Attorney General's office will move to indict him as soon as he's not president anymore.
Yep. And the list of other things waiting for him, including this debt he owes. I literally, if he lost the election and they dragged him out of the White House, I could see him declaring that America had become socialist and go live with his friend Vladimir that runs a much better country than he does, because it's one of the few places that probably wouldn't extradite him.
Right.
What choice will he have?
Right. I wonder if Melania will end up bailing on him. Because, now that we know that he's beyond broke, by about $400 million potentially, I wonder if Melania sticks around. I mean, what is she sticking around for if there's not going to be anything left when he dies?
Yeah, it's going to be so tied up. But she's not a stupid woman. I'll bet that she's squirreled away stuff all along the way. She's got stuff to make sure she's taken care of. And, but anyway, so in our remaining time, and I know we've got one more break coming in, which I expect to come in any time, we're going to talk about the American Anti-Corruption Act. Did you get a chance to look at any more of it in this last week or not really?
Oh, I hear the music.
Yeah, and we'll be right back here on the Dr. Kevin Show.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
911, what is your emergency?
My kid shot himself.
All right, where's the wound, sir?
911, what's your emergency?
Please help. My son shot his brother.
911, what is your emergency?
Okay. 911, please state your emergency.
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns.
It wasn't locked.
Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Hello, and welcome back to the last segment of the Dr. Kevin Show here on OMTimes. Remember, we are a live call-in show, and you can call in and ask a question, share an opinion, as long as it's respectful. We keep all the disrespectful bits for Matt and I. Matt is here as our guest co-host this week, as he always is on the first Thursday of the month, and we're discussing politics. Next week, we will be having Reverend Lori Powers Otto, and we'll be doing Thoughtful Thursday, which we do the second Thursday of every month, where we share stories that are thoughtful, inspirational, and stories to make you thoughtful and to motivate you to live a better life. I heard you say,
I was just going to say, please say hello to Lori for me. I haven't I used to run into her a lot, but I don't anymore. I haven't seen her in quite some time, actually.
Yep. She's here for that one, and then on the Thursday that's closest to the 20th of the month, because in 5 Thursday months that changes, she co-hosts with me and Rob Stewart for innercenter.org, from innercenter.org, where we do planetary influences and do the astrology for the upcoming month. And that will be the 22nd I think it's the 22nd, because the 15th I have author and bon vivant George Hosker Jr. coming on the show to talk about his latest book. So we've got some exciting things coming up in October. So I left it with the question of, did you have a chance to ever look over the Anti-American Act, or the Anti-American Act? That sounds good. The American Anti-Corruption Act.
Who's the Russian now?
I was going to say, if it was the Anti-American Act, we could just call it the Trump Presidency Act instead.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I looked at it, but honestly, I've been so consumed with, debates and taxes and all this stuff with Trump. It fell right out of my head. It went into my head and then fell right back out.
When it did a drive-by shooting, did you find it more interesting than you did when we were talking about it? I don't remember.
Well, I don't like drive-by shootings unless I'm wearing my bulletproof vest.
There you go. So last week we talked about the fact of establishing an independent redistricting commission to stop lobbying gifts, and a voter choice credit. The other thing that was on the bill was the rank and file voting. Now, the reason that this is so important, because we only have a couple of, only one thing left to cover, if I look at my notes correctly, because I remember I hopped around last week because you were so unimpressed with the first one. You were comparing it to unicorns flying or something, as I remember.
Something like that. I remember using the word unicorn, yes.
Yes. So one of the reasons this is so important is everything we talked about in last week's show, which you can find in the archives, and we're talking about in this show. Some part, and in some cases most of, has been started to be implemented by some states. One of the reasons we can't get anything done in Washington, D.C. is because Congress, both parties, have basically colluded together in their own way to make it impossible for them, one or the other, to not be in charge. And it has been set up in such a way that they stay in power and they keep the gridlock going and they keep everything in this cycle of no forward movement that benefits the American people. And in some ways, they're just equally responsible. In this case, there's no good guys or bad guys. Congress just doesn't bring up what Congress doesn't want to talk about. And so, they can table things. Mitch McConnell is famous for just not bringing things up for a vote because he doesn't want to make his people look bad by voting against it, but he doesn't want to see it go in. So they've all played the game, and the game is rigged against the American people. The things we're talking about in the American Anti-Corruption Act are things that can happen at the state level. And Congress, as it stands now, has to abide by the state rules of how the state determines how these things are going to happen. So on a state level, we can make change. We can actually know who our representatives are. One of these, like stopping lobbyist gifts, some states have already done that. So it doesn't make any difference how much PAC money is running around to get somebody elected in a state if they're not allowed to take it, if it can't happen. And that's a state decision, which means you, as a resident of a state who can have more of a voice, can speak out, can actually contact your local rep and may even know them, can work within your system to make change. This is the way we work around Congress and the White House. These are things that no president can veto and no Congress can decide to shelve because it is inconvenient for them to do things like term limits, which is one of the suggestions, that there should be term limits, that there needs to not be a lifetime appointment. In fact, some people are questioning right now whether the Supreme Court should be having a lifetime appointment. And there's at least one person questioning if the presidency shouldn't be a lifetime appointment. Only they're for one, but that's Trump.
Right.
Well, and actually it's more than one person because it's probably him, Melania, and the Trump. The Trump syndicate. And Vladimir. They'd all like to see a Trump dictatorship. But if we do things that we're talking about on a state level, the term limits, also the voter choice credit as a reminder, which is saying each voter gets $100 and they decide which candidate gets access to that $100 to promote their election. You have to be a resident of the state. I believe you might have to be a registered voter or, well, you know what, the thing is, these can vary from state to state. I personally would think you should have to be a registered voter if you're going to be putting money into somebody running for a campaign. But I don't know if that is a mandatory thing. It depends on what the state is and how they do it. If they do the redistricting, which I know is the one that you were like, Matt was having a bad moment.
Is that what I said?
It was you were kind of doing your I've given up hope on the world, we're stuck with this shit show well past my death, Matt.
I do have those thoughts, yes.
Yes. So, but the rank and choice file voting, this is a huge one. And we discussed it some last week, and it's where we ended. And I want to pick it up and give it a couple more minutes because term limits is pretty clear. Term limits has been kicking around for a long time. I don't think there's a lot to talk about that. But rank and choice file voting, the reason why we don't get more parties, more representation, and more independent thought and people that have to learn to work with each other is because of the two-party system, and we're out of time. And the last one is automatic voter registration. Matt, thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up.
Automatic voter registration would make a huge difference in actually getting a Congress that represented the American people and a president, not just one that represented the party and corporate America and PACs and billionaires, all at the cost of the American taxpayer. Have a good week, and we'll see you next week with Thoughtful Thursday and Lori Powers Auto.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.